right, grayed out podcast fans. It is a special night. Tonight is a special night tonight. I'm just going to say, I am amped up for this episode. One, it's episode number 12. Why is that special? I don't know. It's a dozen. Makes sense to me. Let's celebrate that. We're like 2 numbers into double digits now. That's awesome. But even more important than that tonight, I'm not going to pick a topic out of the news headlines. There are plenty to choose from. There are indeed plenty to choose from. I'm going to ask you to pardon me 1 second while I dim the computer screen just a little so it's not all up in my grill. I am excited tonight to talk to you guys. Again, not about news, not about events. I know that's news, events, opinions. Maybe tonight's just an opinion night. Tonight's an opinion night. I think I kind of give an opinion every time I get on the mic. But you know what? Sometimes it's what you want. But tonight, Big Daddy J the Gray is going to give you what you need. It is the first weeknight this week of Freedom Week. Why is it Freedom Week? Because Saturday is the 4th of July. And man, let's be honest. We need something to celebrate, focus on, look at, enjoy. Because 2020 has been a fustercluck of a year, and we've got to put our heads around something that's positive and good. So tonight, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to refocus. I realize there's stuff going on in the world that needs to be addressed. But man, this week I want a freedom so hard that people that come in contact with me walk away going, man, I just feel freer by being near that guy. I don't know why. I just want a freedom so hard that patriotic pixie dust comes out of wherever I'm walking and people are just like, man, I feel good. Whatever it may be, because here's why I think this is so important. Freedom matters for everyone. And if we can focus on the ideal, not the idea, right? Not the thought, but the ideal, the hardcore ideology of freedom for people who need it, then we can start getting behind actual change that makes our society better. Here's why I think this matters. So I'm just going to get into this. I want to make sure that we look at the nation as a whole, our history as a whole, and I realize that there are some spots, birthmarks, some whatever you want to call it, stains, right? Let's just call stains on the history of our country. There are, and we can't get around that. There are these horrifying parts of our past. No one that I am aware of in my entire life, as short relatively as it has been, right, has ever denied the horrible parts of our past. And not many people that I know have ever denied how those have had impact on certain parts of our society, our culture, all of those things. But it really starts to drive me nuts when people start bagging on the country as a whole because of those stains, as though that's unique in history, as though that's somehow an odd man out in the annals of every country ever created in the history of mankind, and it's just not. There have been strife, battles, war, genocides. You start looking at the history of the globe and the development of nations, and you cannot escape the horrors of what those nations have done to themselves, to their citizens, throughout their histories. And you have to remember, I realize it's fresh. Our country isn't even 215 years old. We got 6 more years. 6 more years and we'll be 250 years old. And if you think about that for 2 seconds, and I didn't even realize this so much. Like, you think about 250 years, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of stuff packed in. We learn U.S. history and all these things in school. There's a lot packed into that. But then you go and live somewhere like I lived in Germany, right? You got a country that's got thousands of years of history. They've got buildings, still whole standing buildings that are older than our entire country by 1,000 years or so. Like, it's rough, and you're like, oh man, we really are a bunch of young whippersnappers. And I think that's part of why it strikes me as pure pride and audacity when we seek to undo all of that history as though it's just, or we seek to ignore it because, it was so long ago. It's neither. We can't undo it. We can't erase it. We can't move on from it. We can't pretend it didn't happen. We can't just, oh, well, it was so long ago. Now, it was long ago as far as our lives are concerned. Now, the impacts of some of that history are definitely had more recent ramifications than some other parts, right? We can't escape that either. But here's the deal. And here's why I'm like so amped up tonight about this. Freedom, the ideal of freedom, the value of freedom, the very thing that our founding fathers and for the first century of this country, and really further than that, so many people valued this ideal of freedom because America stood as a beacon of freedom. Even in her hypocrisies, even in her stains, she still stood as an icon of freedoms unknown by anywhere else in the world. And that's why people came here in droves from all over the globe. Was it perfect or easy? No, it was not. Were there mistakes made along the way? Absolutely. But this ideal of freedom, this ideal literally, that inalienable freedoms, rights, the life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, these were the things that our forefathers set in place. And I'm going to say this, and I think this is important to add to the discussion of all the things that are going on. I think a lot of people fail to understand the self-awareness of these men as far as knowing their own flaws and their own fallibilities and their own issues, like creating. I don't think these men thought they were perfect. I don't think they thought they were living up to the ideals that they desired for this foundling nation. I think what they wanted was something that we would all have to grow toward almost eternally, that we would constantly have to chase after and pursue. And that's why this is a twofold thing. This is a twofold piece of why freedom matters for everybody, both sides of the argument, everybody involved. Freedom as an ideal means freedom for everybody, justice for all, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That means fixing the things that need to be fixed. It means addressing the issues of the past, not erasing them, not sanitizing them, not clearing them out of the way so they never, right? It means learning and teaching and describing and understanding the steps of our nation as we've moved forward, even if they cause us to churn inside and be sad and be grievous and be angry and not understand, like, this is what we came through. Like, how could we have even thought these things? Because when we're faced with the crappy parts, the stains of our history, then we look forward and go, man, look where we've come from. Look where we've come from. And look what our forefathers gave us the foundation for. In their wisdom, right? In their unique mindset of what they were looking to accomplish, they didn't establish something that was perfected in its beginnings. They knew it would be perfected over the course of its life, that it would continue to grow, that it would be continued to be aspired toward. And those are freedoms. Those are the rights that they wanted to make sure everyone had. And yes, we had to figure out who that meant over time because there were some bad ideas then as to who it applied to. But now we understand those rights, inalienable rights given by two people by their creator, right? Inalienable. Sorry, I'm having a little because I'm going so fast. The inalienable rights endowed by the creator to creation. Now I realize maybe you're not it literally means an imbued right that's given to you based on the fact that you exist. Let's just say that. That in that there are rights, freedoms that men, women, we possess moving forward as humans. And so these men knew that would be a long process. It wouldn't be something we just came to. It'd be something that we aspired to. Something that we leaned into, lived into. This is the important thing that we need to understand. So, my plan this week, freedom hard. And when I say I'm going to freedom hard, I want to reflect on these things, the places we've come from as a nation, the ideals that make us great as a nation, the things that should unite us together as a nation. Being a patriot, loving liberty, loving freedom. Right now, I hate to say this, but man, it's so much of those like attributes in people get immediately labeled as like racist or white. They're like white priorities for some reason, and it's weird to me. Those are American priorities. Those are like citizens of the United States and residents of the United States priorities, because all through our history, it's been people coming here from across the world to pursue those hand in hand, arm in arm. That's what it's looked like. And we've come to a place where we're so focused on the negative pieces of that, the places where it's not been lived out, that we want to highlight all of that, and we want to forget the things that have been done, the things that have been accomplished, and the things that could be accomplished. For the sake of what? Ripping down, tearing out, leaning into saying, no, we need to make, like, I'm really, honestly, at some levels, in all of the chaos that we're looking at in this year, it's super confusing. So I want to tie this idea of freedom to say, like, both sides need to hold. This wasn't a Republic or Democrat issue when this all started. This was literally humans, people wanting to fight out from under tyranny. And yes, the irony isn't lost on me when we have a nation that is engaged in slavery. I get that. That does not diminish the fact that what they were looking at applies, and that paved the way, right, for the abolitionist movement. It paved the way for the Civil War. It paved the way for these corrections to be made across history, the pursuit of freedom for everybody, and it continues to evolve. And so we as citizens need to continue to pursue that evolution. That's all that really means. So if you are a hardcore Southerner who loves freedom, loves whiskey, cheers to you. You got a big 4x4 truck with Trump flags and American flags, and you're running all over the place, and you believe in the Second Amendment and all those things, and fine. As long as you're using all the leverage you have in pursuing your liberties and your freedoms to help every other citizen in this country pursue theirs, that's what we're asking. And whether you are a hardcore progressive and you are looking to make sure that the smallest of voices are heard, and you're trying to out there fighting the good fight, as long as you're using your leverage to make sure that everyone's freedoms are protected and preserved as we pursue building that together, that's the point. When we start to lean in and say that group's freedoms are not okay, but we need to make sure this group's freedoms are, that's where we cross the bad line. And it's because of this, right, this idea of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, this ideal, this gives us a speech like the Gettysburg Address. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, the episode tonight, sometimes it's what you want. Sometimes you got to get what you need. And maybe you need it, and maybe you don't. I feel like everyone needs this. And so tonight, I'm just reading this. The words from November of 1863, standing on the battlefield of Gettysburg. Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, he said these words, this profound speech that took him minutes to write and minutes to deliver. Here's what he said. 70 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives, that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Those words from that man on that day and that time, so profound, and you miss the small things. Abraham didn't stand there congratulating himself of the great victory won. He didn't stand there congratulating himself of the forward advancement of the things he'd accomplished. He didn't go out and pat himself on the back for the greatness of his presidency. He stood there in humility. He stood there in awe of what had been accomplished on that battleground to advance the cause of freedom, to advance the cause of the abolition of slavery, to advance the cause over which the stars and stripes flew. And I think some people lose sight of that. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But he recognized in this speech that this was a great unfinished work, that this was only the beginning. I think Abraham Lincoln in his wisdom knew that there would be generations that would need to recover from the impact that this had on our nation. That we would need to grow together, live together, pursue together the freedoms that every single person in this country deserves. And we would need to do so even when preserving freedoms for people we disagree with. Even when hearing things that may offend us. And that's the issue, I think, that we've entered into a phase in life where our society is busy tearing down freedoms of others, and they're infringing on those freedoms based on the level of a diverse opinion or someone's offendedness or the subjectivity of others. This is why so many people become scared of the idea of when we just say, oh, we're going to label this thing hate speech or this hate speech or that person's full of, we start to make it so subjective that any offense leads to ruination. Any offense, as I mentioned time and time again, leads to the vilification of the other person. That's not the way our country is supposed to work. We're supposed to be a country pursuing freedom, learning and growing, correcting along the way. And I realize that there are frustrations and pains that go into this. I'm not ignorant to that. But if we can't rally around the idea of freedom, if we can't rally around the idea that our country is a bastion of that freedom across the world, then we're not paying attention. We're not paying attention to the horrors that go on in other countries and how our country compares. And how we have the ability to fix things, speak out, rise in the streets, protest when needed, speak our mind without fear of retribution. And here we sit, still arguing the same thing, fighting the same fight, Still working in the unfinished work that Abraham Lincoln himself pointed out back then. And I think tonight that we should be people that are resolved toward freedom. Freedom and justice for all. The thing that our forefathers stood for, even in their stained, sinful lives. Even in the things that they did wrong, even in the things that they got wrong, they got so much right. And we can't live in a world where because of one wrong or some wrong that the good just is all undone, and that the ideals, as sound as they are clearly somehow unfounded because they couldn't live up to them. Name me really like any great ideal any one of us can completely live up to. We're hard pressed in that. So, the beauty of freedom and the pain of freedom exist hand in hand, because freedom costs. Freedom costs. It costs us. We have to lay down ourselves. We have to lay down some of our wants. We have to be willing to enter in so that the freedoms of others are preserved, even at some of our cost. But when we all fight together for everyone's equal freedom, it pays off. So I'm not talking about, make sure I'm clear about this. I'm not talking about taking from others and giving to others. I'm talking about when we together look toward these basic freedoms. And I think that the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness sums it up very well. These are inalienable rights, imbued rights, rights that come to you because you exist. They're rights that scream freedom. Freedom costs. It costs us a little bit of our safety, costs us a little bit of security. It's like walking out on a tightrope. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff. It's in that place where the exhilaration of freedom and the cost of freedom all exist together. I mean, I would say it's like standing at the door of a plane when you're getting ready to jump out. The cost is the tension in your body, the fear of I'm stepping out into nothing, hoping that this nylon thing over my head will expand and keep me afloat until I hit the ground. It's like that. You'll have to step out into places that make you feel a little but the payback is so worth it. The payback is so worth it. One small thing that I'm going to touch on real quick before I wrap up, and that is this idea of the flag. And I know there's been a lot of things floating around about the flag and the flag, flying during racist times. Let's just, come on, can we just grow up just a little bit? I served as a veteran, and so for me, this flag is the American flag is a flag that is special. It has meaning, it has symbolism, it has nothing to do with slavery. It has nothing to do with the things that have been wrong. It has everything to do with the things that we can make right. People seem to forget that this flag, right, the stars, the stripes, this flag flew over the Union armies that were crushing the Confederate Army to get rid of slavery. People forget that. We didn't come up with it afterward. It wasn't flying. It literally was the flag that led armies into battle to free slaves. It was the flag that flew over Iwo Jima. It was the flag. It is a flag around the world that means something so profound. So profound that people that hate it want to burn it. And I just get tired of hearing about how it's evil. It represents all of this. Again, I'm not denying that we have a spotted history and I'm not stained history. But even the deepest of stains can be addressed. Even the deepest of stains can be learned from. Even the deepest of scars tell stories and help us to grow and move forward. And this flag has flown over all of those things: stains, scars, victories, beauty, and darkness, all at the same time. And so many people have lost their lives and fought for this flag, for what this country stands for the ideal of freedom. So we can sit here now in 2020 in the middle of this FUSTERCLUCK year and fight forward toward what we need as a nation. And I wish we could just all step back for 2 seconds and realize what we need as a nation is freedom. Freedom. The freedom to speak, the freedom to share, the freedom to disagree, the freedom to live and let live, the freedom to fight for other people's freedoms, the freedom to bring everyone on board, the freedom to drive toward unity. All of us. So, we owe it to one another as citizens of this country. We owe it to one another. And I say citizens, residents, immigrants. We owe it to the humans that are on or in the country, on, in, around. We owe it to the people around us, right? Let's just start there. How about you start with your community? You owe it to the people around you. You owe it to your city. You owe it to your county. You owe it to the people who live near, around you, to make sure that you are fighting for their freedoms. Even when you disagree. And you're not trying to shut that conversation down. You're not one of those people that's so entrenched in your own side that other people's freedoms don't matter. So, this week, I just want to encourage you. If you're listening, if you hear this, if you're watching, I want to encourage you. Right? Let's not focus on the scars of the past, the stains of the past, but what they have taught us and the road that they have paved moving forward. And let that be the fuel that helps us be better. This Freedom Week, as we lead toward the 4th of July, you're going to hear and see a lot of things. You're going to hear a lot of people screaming about how the nation is just, it's a lost cause. It's a dumpster fire. Don't believe it, because it's not. And if it is a lost cause, it's the greatest lost cause that ever lived, and we should fight for it. It's not that far lost. It's not that far gone. It's something that we should pursue to rectify and help this nation live up to the ideals that were set out at the very beginning, and go back to being the people who pursue those ideals, knowing that imperfect men laid them in place, and imperfect men and women and immigrants and people have been fighting for those rights and moving the ball forward ever since. And we'll continue to do so. So, can we stop for a week, realize that we live in a place that is unique to this globe, and that this 244-year-old experiment is going to have a lot of hiccups. But we're better together if we're pursuing freedom. So let's be better. And let freedom be the fuel that makes us better than we were yesterday, better today, better tomorrow, better friends, neighbors, co-workers, family members, parents, husbands, wives, lovers, partners, whatever. Better. Better because of where we live, better because of who we are, better because of the people around us. So, all that said, I'm Jay the Gray. If you like this, make sure you hit the like button, smash that like button down, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe, make sure you go out and tell the world that you love them, right? One of the big things I meant to announce tonight, probably toward the beginning would have been better, but here I am at the end announcing it anyway. And maybe I'll try and put it in toward the beginning. I'll make a little header video leading in. I've entered into an affiliate agreement with the excellent dudes, the excellent guys over at Live Bearded. Now, some of you may have noticed, right? If you're listening to the podcast, I'm sorry you can't see it, but I have this glorious gray mane adorning my face, and I care for this thing. I care for it a lot. I use product in it. I use beard shampoo, beard balm, beard oil. I make sure I keep it all in check. I keep it nice and trimmed. Mustache wax to make sure that the little handlebars can still move or still go flare out. I'm gonna get my flare on. But the guys over at Live Bearded, they have great products. They are the ones that the Freedom shirt. So apropos for tonight came from Live Bearded. These guys over there at livebearded.com, they've given me an opportunity to help spread the Live Bearded word. So if you've got a beard or you know someone who's got a beard, you want to get them some good quality products, head on over to livebearded.com. And I'll tell you what, if you put in the promo code GRADEOUTBEARD, that's GRAYED, grade out beard, you'll get 10% off of your purchase. And that'll get you a little bit more for your dollar. So great products, great people, great brotherhood over at Live Bearded. I'm happy to be just out here repping for them. So that said, once again, I'm Jay the Gray. You've been grayed out.